You're absolutely right, and I think this we're going to see in terms of the impact on the U.S. economy. I mean, I think there's greater uncertainty there because the goalposts are shifting every day. We don't know what the economic effects are going to be of what's happening in terms of the restructuring of the federal government. We don't know what the impact is going to be on consumer demand, on business investment behavior around tariffs and trade.
You're more worried about the United States than Europe?
Yeah, I think the U.S. risk premium is going up, actually, and I think that is one of the big global calls, is if America is now quite unreliable, what does that actually mean for global capital? And I'd say the irony is I think the biggest beneficiary has probably been China so far of all of these US policies. We've seen that reflected in Chinese stock prices, because all of a sudden you go, well, if this is how America behaves, if America has no allies, suddenly there is an equivalence between the two jurisdictions.
Yeah, I think you make a lot of very, very valid points, by the way. Lovely to see you. It's been a while.
Likewise.
But I do think there are medium-term problems for Europe and the rest of the world as well. And I hear totally what you're saying about the US compared with other jurisdictions. Incoherence, which is what you said, without doubt will hit confidence. And if confidence is hit, then investment decisions are delayed. And I think that could delay investment decisions across the board, because you don't know if you're, and going back to your point, if you're an American CEO, can I still go for that Mexican operation? Can I still lower my cost of production by having production in friendly, close related countries? Or actually now those countries now are enemies. And that's the problem, isn't it? Suddenly, allies from the reshoring away from China to places like Mexico, suddenly that's become a very dangerous strategy. So the incoherence, I think, can lead to medium-term decision-making being delayed.
You're absolutely right. There's lots of great points there. I mean, I think if you look at the kind of raw materials of the economy that Trump is dealing with, America has come into this situation by a country mile, the strongest of the major geographies. I mean, if you look at American demography, just look at the rate of GDP growth. You know, we've had 2 years of pretty much Goldilocks economics, full employment, higher productivity growth, higher overall growth. So America's sort of prior condition is extremely strong. I think on what the economic consequences of this are, I think are highly uncertain, because simultaneous to all of this policy uncertainty, we have this transformative technology, as we've seen overnight with respect to NVIDIA. And I think that is going to drive corporate investment spending, and is driving corporate investment spending. So I think this is what's so fascinating for me as a macro investor at the moment. I have huge policy uncertainty causing asset price volatility, but I also have this transformative technology. I think it's unprecedented. And the big call in the next 12, 18 months is, what does it do to inflation? What does it do to productivity growth? What does it do to the demand for labor? Because that could easily dominate all of the policy noise.
Talk to me about Keynes and Europe, because I think you have hit upon something in your bullets you sent as well about Keynesianism being a driver perhaps of emerging defence spending. Well, we just had a gentleman sitting in that seat as well who was talking about maybe it's going to drive social housing, maybe it's going to drive infrastructure. The rebuilding of Ukraine will drive a lot of rebuilding as well. Is Europe very well placed from a shareholder point of view, rather than just from a structural point of view?
Well, I think we have all been crying out for this for a very long time with respect to Europe. I mean, growth is too low, productivity growth is too low in Europe. We've seen it with the Draghi report. What we know about the European political system, it is very, very different to other jurisdictions, and Europe tends to respond in emergency. If we look at the big progress, it's been crisis related. If we go back to the Euro crisis, if we think about COVID, easing all of the fiscal rules around COVID. And I think what's happening in the Ukraine, I think the most optimistic scenario is it galvanizes Europe into some sort of fundamental change in its economic direction. And I think that is plausible. I mean, so I think the issue actually should transition now from military spending to what is the nature of military spending. Is this a technological R&D-led military spending, which could actually become some sort of a broader productivity story in Europe? Because it's very interesting, if you look at the history of the interaction between military spending and the real economy, someone like an economist like Mariana Mazzucato, ironically coming from the left of the political spectrum, a lot of her work really shows that actually a lot of American productivity, a lot of the technology we have today has come from the military. Now, if you look at technology, That's what Europe should be talking about. We should be saying we have leading edge technology in semiconductors. We have, if you look even at Britain, leading edge technology in AI, similarly in France. We have an extraordinary industrial capacity in Germany. I mean, far superior the industrial strength of Europe compared to Russia. Can we see all of those components coming together in a kind of military Keynesianism, for want of a better term, which could really galvanize and change, the economic trajectory?
Being devil's advocate,